sections, and just as a point of clarification, in the second section, the agenda indicates that we would have the swearing in after the roll call. As the attorney has pointed out, you can't swear people in. You have to have them sworn in before you can have a roll call. So we're going to adjust the second agenda for the second portion of the meeting. So what will happen is we will have a very brief meeting of the old board, after which we will adjourn sine die, which means that we do not set a date for the old board to ever reconvene again. And then we will take a brief intermission, and we'll reconstitute the board with the new board members sitting here, and then proceed to the swearing in at that point. So with that, the first item on the agenda is roll of the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the Pledge of the Flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is reports of village officers. I do not have a report this evening, so we'll turn immediately to the village manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I have 3 items that I want to cover as far as my reports, and they actually have to do with my having the distinct honor and privilege to hand out service plaques. And I think what I'd like to do is I'm probably going to do it from the podium. We're also going to make the presentation to each individual. 3 wonderful public servants who will be leaving our leadership team after tonight's board meeting. By order of seniority, the first I'd like to recognize is Trustee Georgia O'Neill. Georgia was appointed in 2006 to fill a vacancy on the board. Drawing on her long-standing career in business chamber circles, she brought with her a keen awareness of what it takes to foster good relationships between the board and the staff. A self-professed cheerleader, Georgia was always active in interfacing with other communities, agencies, and businesses in the region. She built good relationships upon which her Park Forest colleagues could work with the contacts that she had established. Beyond that, Georgia became a close friend, and I got to work with her and share a backyard fence with her. I'll surely miss her friendship and her gentle guidance. Georgia, on behalf of the Village of Park Forest and its citizens, I present you this plaque recognizing your service to our community.
Later, but I want to say he's not going to miss my friendship because.
Next up, I'd like to recognize Senior Trustee and President Pro Tem Mae Brandon. Mae Brandon's service on the Village Board of Trustees, yes, your round of applause. Mae's service with the Village Board of Trustees dates back to 2003. Like Trustee O'Neill, Mae was appointed to fill a vacancy on the Village Board. Her appointment proved to be a good one as she was substantiated by the Park Forest voters, and she was re-elected several times to lead the community, our community. Mae has always struck me as being a quiet persona, and for those of you that may feel that way, don't let it fool you. That calm exterior should not fool anyone because she was very good at holding people accountable behind the scenes. I know the Trustee Tiffany Graham can attest to that, but I know I surely can, where she would talk to us behind the scenes and let us know we should have done this or we should have done that. And I think that's what a good leader does. A good leader is very calm in the face of the public, but behind the scenes let people know what has to be done. She always did it in a way that left people apologetic for their misstep. She was also an ardent supporter of the village and an ambassador on so many different levels, be it through the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association, the Illinois Municipal League, Kiwanis, her church, or the various boards or commissions that she served as a trustee liaison. Quite frankly, May, I don't know how you did it all the time that you did. Most people don't realize for the overwhelming majority of the time on her board, she also worked full-time. I have no idea how she did that, and it makes me tired sometimes just thinking of the work that she was putting in. The final two things that I would note about May are that, one, she read everything and she was always calm under pressure. Only once in 16 years of working with her do I recall her raising her voice to the point where she was very mad at someone. And if you want to know about that, I'll tell you off camera what this is. As for reading everything, it is my protocol to call the village board on the afternoon of village board meetings. The new trustee-elect should get used to having that phone call every Monday afternoon to assess if there are any questions on anything that's on the agenda, or if there are any questions on the board update that I had sent out the previous Friday. Invariably, May would reel off the top of her head all of the agenda items that were on discussion and any questions or nuances that might exist. And if you've seen our agenda, sometimes there may be 8, 10, 12, 14 agenda items, and May would just go right off the top of her head. And I was always very impressed with that, May. I'm not sure how you did that. She would also recall what I thought to be the items of influence or of particular importance with the preceding Friday's update. Was always on top of what was going on in her community, in spite of all the stuff that may be going on with all the other various irons she had in the fire, whether it was with her church or with Kiwanis or in her home life, where she has spent time caring not only for Cal, but also for her mother, who's lived with her for the past couple of years. I know I speak for many in this room, amongst the village board and the village staff, when I note to May that she will be sorely missed on our leadership team. It is my honor and privilege to present this plaque to you from the Village of Park Forest, recognizing your long-standing and exemplary tour of service as village trustee. Last and certainly not least, I have the honor of recognizing Mayor John Ostenburg. John has amassed a career in public service that spans nearly 30 years. This includes 2 different tenures as village trustee and a term as state representative down in Springfield. Most importantly, John's nearly 3 decades of tenure in public service includes 20 years as the mayor of Park Forest. He has the distinction of being the longest-serving mayor in the history of Park Forest. And I hope people understand the gravity of that. As our community, he's the longest-tenured mayor. Along the way, he has made a true impact on our community, the south suburbs, the state of Illinois, and on a national level. He was instrumental in diversifying the village board, both in race and gender. He did this through careful appointments to fill multiple trustee vacancies. These appointments included Benita Dillard, Mae Brandon, and Georgia O'Neill. Each of these selections were validated several times over by the Park Forest electorate, with all 3 trustees being re-elected on multiple occasions. These 3 appointments led the village and established a solid and cohesive leadership team for nearly 15 years. Mayor Ostenburg served as the president of the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association. That's an organization of 45 to 47 towns, and the president of that organization was your mayor. He has been integral in various committees within the SSMMA and with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. If that were not enough, he also served on posts with the National League of Cities. In particular, he was the co-chair of the Race, Equity, and Leadership Initiative in the National League of Cities. The Race, Equity, and Leadership Initiative is something that is unfolding on a national landscape in very large communities across Illinois, or across the country, including Austin and major metropolitan areas, Phoenix, Seattle, Portland. And when you look at the people that are on those groups and who are leading the charge, The person who's actually the co-chair is the mayor of our community, a relatively small community of 22,000 residents in the south suburbs of Illinois, which people need to understand there's 330 million people in our country, and one person leading that committee comes from your community right here in the south suburbs. You cannot overvalue or overestimate exactly what that influence is. Finally, a real testament to John's ability to lead came last November when the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, which is an entity that encompasses 275 mayors from all over Cook County and the collar counties. As you might guess, the MMC has a tremendous talent pool from which to draw in establishing its executive board. It's the board that includes mayors from some major communities across the Chicagoland area, including a mayor by the name of Rahm Emanuel. Keeping in mind the talent pool, guess who was unanimously selected to be chairman of the board for the Mayor's Caucus? Park Forest Mayor John Ostenburg. Think about that. While we should all be able to recognize and agree that these various posts are indicative of John's leadership, I am eternally grateful for the working relationship that we had over the past 15 years. In our form of government, the council manager form, there needs to be a good relationship between the elected board and the manager. In particular, it is critical that there be a symbiotic relationship between the mayor and the manager. This has been the case with Mayor Ostenburg. He has been a visionary leader for Park Forest on so many policy initiatives. He has been a master parliamentarian in running village meetings, and this is a skill that cannot be overlooked or overemphasized. A fundamental component of our form of government is that there should be some semblance of what is called the policy and administration dichotomy. Over the years, the mayor has taken charge of the policy side and deferred to the village manager and the professional staff to carry out the administration. On many occasions, there would be hints from the public about someone wanting to get hired because they knew someone. That person might say, well, that's the Chicago way. They would say that that's the Cook County way. Or that's the Illinois way, that people get hired based on who they know. John's response always simply would be, well, that ain't the Park Forest way. We hire people based on... Park Forest has a reputation for hiring people based on what they know and not who they know. Besides holding the manager and the management team in high regard, the mayor has long been a supporter of the work that gets done by the day-to-day staff. He has been integrally involved with organized labor for most of his life, and routinely he will remind people that the worker deserves his or her wage and should be treated in a fair and decent manner. He always walked the walk when it came to recognizing and appreciating hard-working village staff. And I can tell you on many occasions I've heard of managers in other communities who would have to deal with the mayor or board who would talk about undercutting the professional staff, the working staff, the police officers. Can't we get a little bit more out of them? Can't we take a little bit more away? That never happened. That conversation never happened once in 20 years. John went about his business in a low-key, non-bravado sort of way. I actually had to work with his wife Jackie behind the scenes just to get him recognized at our holiday party last December. I also had to work with her behind the scenes to get him recognized and to schedule a retirement reception within the past couple of weeks. Because if you were to ask John, he was going to tell you that no one's going to show up to that reception. I was there for the entire time, and literally hundreds of people came through the door to recognize his service. I have told the staff on many occasions that in going about one's career, you can learn from everyone that you work with and who you work for. In some cases, you learn from people a lot of what not to do, and I've come across people like that. That's not the case with John. In the case of working with him, I learned a tremendous amount and seemed to grow with his guidance up until today. John, your legacy with the village is unmatched, and it's an honor. It has been an honor to work with you and to work for you. More importantly, it has been a privilege to call you my friend. With all of that being said, I'd like to present you a plaque from the Village of Park Forest and its citizenry in recognition of your long tenure to your fellow residents. Come on up, John.
All right, let us, I can't tell you how torturously embarrassing some of this is, but the only consolation is my pastor at St. Irenaeus one time when he was introducing me at a gathering, after he had introduced me, he said, who wouldn't want to hear their eulogy while they were still alive? Anyway, we will move on with the reports from other village officers. Anything for the village attorney?
Nothing.
Thank you. Village clerk?
No report.
All right, moving on. Commission liaisons and committee chairpersons. Any reports this evening? Trustee O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple little comments to make as my last meeting. And just one little fact about me before I get to the important part about all of you. Next year, I will have been a resident of Park Forest for 50 years. And I have served for approximately 35 years in positions that included service to Park Forest and was active as a Park Forest volunteer for some of those beginning years. Enough about me, but here's the important part. I firmly believe that the blessings in our lives are people. So here are thanks to the following. Thank you to my family, Johnny, Terry, and Tony, who are here. You can raise your hands. And daughters, Terry and Kate, and grandchildren, Colleen and Jordan, were not able to be here today. Thanks for your support and your love. Nothing in my life is meaningful without my family. Thank you to board members. We were a great team. And it's been a privilege and honor to have served alongside you, all of you. Thanks to our staff, our treasurers, particularly our village manager, Tom Nick. Can we have him? And I want to give kudos to Mayor John Ostenburg, who always kept our staff in mind and appreciated their talents and their efforts. And we heard that time after time. Thanks to our volunteers, we couldn't achieve what we do without you. And last but not least, thanks to our citizens for your dedication to Park Forest. You made everything I did as a trustee worth my time and effort. Thank you all.
Any other reports? Anyone? Trustee Brandon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As my last duty as liaison to my commissions, which have been really great, the Economic Development Advisory Group will have its monthly meeting on Wednesday at 6 p.m. here in the board conference room. And the Veterans Commission will have its monthly meeting here also on Saturday at 9:30 and the board conference room. So that's my last duty to my commissions. What can I say? I kind of dwelled over what was I going to say, should I write it down? I started to write things down and then I tore them up, and then, you know, even up until just about 5 minutes ago, I started to write something down and I decided, forget it. I seldom follow whatever I've written down anyway. But much as Trustee O'Neill says, it's really been a great experience. I came here in '66 and I was but a child. But I consider, you know, when people talk about home, they often talk about the place where they grew up and that sort of thing. And I grew up in Baltimore, but really home has been here in Park Forest. This has been my home. And I've been very proud to call this my home. I feel it was a blessing that the secretary that worked with my husband when he began here at U of C lived out here and brought us out here, because I had no idea what this Park Forest and all I saw was corn. And back then you have to remember there was no I-57. It was just 394 and Halsted Street and corn and and I really thought, where did my husband bring me? You know, all the way 700 some miles, and he's going to plant me here in the middle of a cornfield. So I was a little, you know, kind of uneasy, kind of figuring out. Actually spent probably the first several months driving back and forth to Baltimore. And that was the time when you could do that as a single, you know, not as a single person, but a single driver. You know, I would jump in the car and I'd tell my mother that I'm coming home, and I'd drive. You know, the truckers would get to watch out for you with their CDs and their horns and let you know, where the police person is. Yeah, I have, well, I had and still have. I still have a heavy foot.
I-57 or off I-36.
But it really was an interesting experiment in that we were only supposed to be here for 2 years. And here we are 50-some years plus. My kids have grown up here, and actually I've grown up here. My life took a different turn being here in Park Forest than it would have been if I was in Baltimore. I had different types of relationships than sure that I would have had if I had remained in Baltimore. So I really consider being a Park Forest resident a very good blessing. This is where I was directed, and I'm glad. I have to say that this has been a great experience, and I really have to thank all of you. I first have to thank Mayor Ostenburg for even providing this opportunity, but then you, the citizens, for allowing me to continue to serve in the way that I did for the past 16 years. It was my honor that you gave me and allowed me to do that. I have grown to know many of you in various ways, through various commissions, through various activities. We have a great village. And yes, I remember what it was when I moved here in '66. Those of us that have been around. But it's not just been Park Forest, it's South Suburban areas. It's different. But I've been very proud of our village, and that through all of the changing times and the challenges, that we have remained stable, and that we've maintained good government, and that we've been fiscally responsible. That has been something that I think that you as residents should also be very proud of. I have to say, I'll do that last, but I've enjoyed all the commissions that I've served on as liaison, and I think I've served on all of them. So I will miss you, and don't worry, I'll stop by every now and then, and just to say hello and see how things are going. All of the activities that have been involved, whether they've been done by various commissions or been done by the village, that have brought us all together, I think have been really fantastic. So I really encourage you to continue that. You know, summer is great because we have Main Street nights, and all of those good things. So take advantage of that. And bring a friend and a neighbor with you. One of the things that we now have is our Park Forest Leadership Academy, which really gives you an opportunity to understand the government and understand the workings of the village. And not just to say, we're going to do that so you can become a trustee. It's not designed for that, but it's designed to help you kind of see the workings and help you develop leadership skills that you may use in other ways in terms of volunteerism. So please take advantage of that. I know that there's enrollment applications out now for the coming fall, so please do that. Our staff. I have said this numerous times that we have the best staff there is in Illinois. And I want to give them a hand. Throughout the years, as we've had to make adjustments, our staff has been very willing to go along with those adjustments. Our management staff has really been top-notch. And of course, the head of our management staff is our manager, Tom Beck. And I not only consider him the head of our staff, but he's been a great friend. And so I'm going to miss that relationship. But it goes on. Our police department, our fire and safety, all of you, you're all really great. And I have appreciated you and will continue to appreciate you. And I'm not far, so don't worry. And then I have to say thank you to my family. My husband has always said he's not into politics, so believe me, this has always been a chore for him. And through the last couple of years, going in the second year, while I worked and continued my role in the village, he has taken on the responsibility of being the primary caretaker for my mother. And I cannot say what that means because it's a big job, and he's been willing to do that. So I have to thank my family, my son, and my grandchildren, who don't get this way much anymore because they have their own lives, and the twins that are graduating from junior high, and the oldest one who's, I can't believe it's going to be a junior in high school. So they have their own lives, but they're very dear, and they mean a lot to me. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other trustee comments this evening? It's Trustee Sells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank Trustee O'Neill, Trustee Brandon, and Mayor Ostenburg for the long tenure of public service that you've given to Park Forest. All three of you are truly should get the recognition that you have for all the long tenure that you've been given to the community. It's been a pleasure working with all of you on the board. You all three have been a real mentor for me, and I would like to say thank you and much happiness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would like to say in parting of two of my colleagues here at the dais, Trustee O'Neill and Trustee Brandon. I was happy to be part of one of the most successful municipal teams in the history of the South Suburbs. And
These two stalwarts were in no small measure the catalyst that kept us way above the common, I was going to say a bad word, not for that word, just a bad word, but it kept us above the usual. And I am truly going to miss their presence. I'm going to miss the things that I've learned from them. I'm going to miss the camaraderie. There's lots that I'm going to miss. From Mayor Ostenburg, really going to miss him. Most intelligent man I ever met. And his leadership, just second to none. The things that he has been involved in, the things that he's currently involved in, are things that should go down as, oh, this was part of Illinois' history, that we had such a brilliant young man in the south suburbs who served a number of years. And he served selflessly. He brought about quite a few things that would not have occurred without his effort. There are not many people on this planet that I can say I learned from. One of my favorite sayings is that I only, in terms of debate, I only debate my peers, all others I teach. John Ostenburg, my peer, can't teach him anything. I told that before. So we're all going to miss one of this town's stalwarts. Not one, but three of this town's stalwarts. And the persons who come forth to fill their shoes, I just hope you understand what you're getting into. And I hope that you can serve to the best of your ability. And I'm sure that even the newcomers may outstrip some of the things that the three stalwarts here have produced in the work that they do for the Village of Park Forest. And thank you all.
Trustee comments? Trustee Vanderbilt.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Trustee O'Neill, just for your encouragement and support. Just thank you for your service and your continued service. Thank you, Madam Pro Tem, and just for your continued leadership and service of us. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for this community, both of you, and thank you, Mayor Ostenburg, for this past 20 years and leading us down this path, so thank you.
The Youth Commission is going to meet on Wednesday, May 8th at 7 o'clock here at Village Hall. And my last meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission with the Planning and Zoning Commission will be on next Tuesday, May 14th at 7 o'clock. I'm already too emotional. Thank you so much for being mentors to me. From the very start, all three of you guys were very, very, very helpful. And May, I'm not gonna know what to do without seeing you on my left. So. Mayor, there's really no words. You brought the real committee to Park Forest, and I really think that that was the most awesome thing that anybody could have done for our community. Georgia, you've always been like the business hand up here, and I appreciate you lending your expertise, because I'm always going to side with my emotions and my heart. And you brought another aspect to it. I mean, you said you got it with your voice, so I really appreciate that. And it's really nothing else I can say, except I'm gonna miss this board.
I'm going to call on the village manager now to continue with his report, which we kind of interrupted there with all the comments.
Yeah, and my apologies, I actually should have noted this at the outset, because I think it's appropriate. The village wants to offer condolences. We've had a couple of, 3 different things actually happen to our team within the last couple of weeks since our last meeting. In just order of when they took place, condolences to the family of Rob and Barb Gunther on the passing of Barb's mother a couple of weeks ago. Services were held in their hometown of Morgantown, West Virginia, and our condolences and best wishes to Rob, Barb, and their family. Condolences to the family of Mayor-elect John Vanderbilt and his wife Kathleen on the sudden passing of Kathleen's father. Services were held this past Saturday in Stager, and our thoughts are with John, Kathleen, and their entire family. And then finally, condolences to the family of village attorney Felicia Frazier, the passing last week of her sister. Services are this coming Friday in Chicago. Any questions on service arrangements can be directed to me at Village Hall in the village manager's office. And it's been an incredibly eventful last week. Various things happening, and so our condolences and sympathies to those people that lost loved ones. Our thoughts are with you. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. We will, I'm going to exercise Chair's prerogative and dispense with the citizens' comments, observations, and petitions for this portion of the meeting, since the adjourned portion has the same item on the agenda. So any citizens that have comments will be free to give them at that time. So we'll move directly then to a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Brandon?
I move that the consent agenda and each item therein be hereby approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Does anyone want the one item removed for further discussion? Okay. Then will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Brandon.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
McCray.
Aye.
O'Neill.
Aye.
Settles. Aye. Vanderbilt.
Aye.
Mayor Ostenburg.
Aye. The motion is approved. The items on the consent agenda this evening were the approval of the minutes of the rules meeting of March 25th, 2019, the regular meeting of March 25th, 2019, and the rules meeting of April 1st, 2019. Before I call for the motion for the adjournment of the CNAD, I want to take about 2 minutes to just simply thank the residents of the Village of Park Forest for the great opportunity that's been extended to me over the course of, 30 years, 29 years in office. With a few interruptions there of a year or two somewhere along the way. But I deeply appreciate the support that the community has given to me. I also want to say how much I appreciate the support of the people that I have served with has been to me. You know, when I look at the wall over there, you know, there have been 10 mayors of the Village Park Forest. I'm number 10, John will be number 11. But the 9 who preceded us were the people who formed the community of Park Forest. They were the ones who did all of the hard work. When I first met Judge Deach, he told me about the early days of Park Forest when he wrote most of the ordinances that we have. The initial language for those ordinances. They've been developed along the way. When I met Bob Dinnerstein, and he talked to me about how when the Village of Park Forest, through the efforts of the Unitarian Church, voluntarily integrated our community, when other communities all around us were fighting integration, and the members of the Unitarian Church who were part of the Social Action Committee went out and found white homeowners that were willing to sell homes to African American purchasers, and then identified African American purchasers who were willing to move to Park Forest. And Mayor Dinnerstein and the Chief of Police and a few of the trustees actually went house to house throughout the village, knocking on doors and telling residents that they would not tolerate any kinds of problems that might occur as a result of that move-in. And when Mayor Dinnerstein was an elderly gentleman at the time, he told me that story, and subsequently I've had the opportunity to read the transcript of his oral history recounting of that and several other things that's part of our library collection, it's really a very moving testimony to what Park Forest was all about. And I think it's been an inspiration. Barney Cunningham, who served 10 years as our mayor, was instrumental in so much planning. If you ever go down to the offices of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency on Planning, there's a plaque on the wall that has Barney Cunningham's picture on it, and a testimony to how he contributed not only to our South Suburban region, but to all of the greater Chicagoland area in municipal planning. And he served as our mayor for 10 years. Jerry Matthews, I had the opportunity to serve under him. I served under Pat Kelly, and I served under Ron Bean. So 3 of the mayors that I was able to serve under. Mayor Singerman, I did not serve under as a trustee, but I had a great opportunity to become acquainted with him and learned a lot from him. We learned from the people who have walked before us, and they were all great personages who contributed so much to the building of this community that we all love and esteem. But during the course of my time on the board as a trustee and as mayor, there have been about 30 people who have served as trustees. And there's also a great learning process that has come about from just interacting with all of them. You know, sometimes we were in agreement, sometimes we were in disagreement, but you learn as much from the disagreements as you do from the agreements. And it was a real honor to actually be educated by my colleagues, because that's exactly what happens during the course of reviewing budgets and going through, ordinance changes and things of that sort. We learn from one another. So it's been a great experience, and certainly the experience that I've had with the current members of the board has been outstanding. So when I look at, having served with 3 former mayors, having served with 30 trustees, with having served with, I think, 4 village managers, having served with 6 village clerks, that's a lot of people that I've had the opportunity to learn from. So I say thank you to all of them. I say thank you to all of you. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn sine die.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee McCray.
I move that we adjourn this meeting sine die in preparation for what is to come.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, we will, after the motion, we will take a brief recess. So, okay. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.